stories from Australian Aboriginal mythology is exactly why I love mythology. There are things in mythology that describe the actual experiences that our ancestors did have. They explain the environment, they explain specific concepts and ideologies. It's a glimpse into history in some cases, not in every instance. Now, we're going to be talking about the Wagalak sisters, and there's a lot of different pronunciations. It's a sacred story. This is one of the creation myths of the rainbow serpent. This happens during the dreaming, and all of this is something we're going to talk about while we're diving into this beautiful, extraordinary story. Before we begin, I'd like to note that this is a sacred story. There are elements of the story that are not allowed for us people that are not a part of the Aboriginal society to even see or hear about. Right now, the story I'm going to present to you today is public for everybody, and there's different variations, but there's common themes. This is a story that kind of is altered in different places in Northern Australia, so keep that in mind. Let's get into it. It's such a cool story. The Wagalak myth is usually long and quite detailed, covering small as well as large events for the Dua people. This opens up conversations, songs, names of places, food, etc. This is an extremely simplified outline of the myth. The story of the Wagalak sisters takes place in Dreamtime. This is a period of time in Aboriginal belief where ancestral beings created the land, as well as the social and linguistic structures in it. The Wagalak sisters is told across Arnhem land, the place where the story is said to have taken place remains a sacred site. The two sisters leave their home in Waggilak country for their long journey toward the northern coast. In some versions, the eldest sister is pregnant or already has a small child or even two. The youngest has just reached puberty. In another version, she's the one that's pregnant. The sisters give names to the places along their way, as well as to all the vegetable foods and small creatures that they collect. They begin to grow weary, and they find a place to rest. A quiet water hole shaded by paper bark trees and cabbage palms. They do not know it is the home of the great python. They gather materials to create a place of rest. Now, things begin to turn. Depending on the version, the eldest sister gives birth to a child, or sometimes it's the youngest, and sometimes it's one of the sisters menstruating. Regardless, the scent of blood begins to approach the water hole, and it falls into it. Dark clouds gather, and rain begins to fall, lightly at first, then heavily with wind, thunder, and lightning engulfing the hut in a fierce storm sent by the great python. During the night, the sisters, in turn, dance, they sing and call in a ritual way to attempt to calm the storm and appease the great python. They sing songs with increasingly greater sacred power, songs about the great python, about circumcision ritual, about blood, and other secret sacred songs. There is a pause. The sisters think the storm is over and everything is good. So they fall asleep while the rainbow serpent emerges from the water. The serpent coils around the hut. It puts its head inside, bites their noses, drawing more blood, and swallows them, along with everything in the tent, including children, dogs, knives, whatever is in the story. Later, an ant bites him. He jumps and vomits them out, but then he swallows the sisters back up again. The serpent raises her head towards the sky and talks with other great snakes to the east and southeast about what each of them had been eating. He admits he has eaten the Wawalag sisters. Lowering itself to the ground again, the serpent sinks into its water hole with the sisters inside of them. Some stories add that the sisters are puked back up again and are revived, but ultimately are swallowed again. This happens over and over again as the serpent takes them back along an underground watercourse to Wawalag country. He spits the women out and they turn to stone. One thought about this final scene is that due to the sisters' loss of control over their power, nature itself turned against them. The story also carries messages for women about care of mothers and newborns. Ultimately, the rainbow serpent made laws that everyone is to obey. The rainbow serpent said, quote, "Those who keep my laws will be rewarded. I will give them human form. Those who break my laws will be punished and turned to stone and will never to walk the earth again." Some of these laws are in regards to a thing called Mowidi. Now, what on earth is that? So, Mowidi system, it's also called dual organization. It is a form of social organization characterized by the division of society into two complementary parts. And I know that was a lot of words, so let's try to make this a little easier to conceptualize. What is a Mowidi? In Mowidis, everything, including people, trees, animals, the entire environment, are split into two perfect halves. Each half is a mirror image of the other. In order to understand the universe, these two images have to come together. Now, imagine we have the northern United States split into half, and then we have the southern United States. Everybody who lives and is a part of the northern United States are one Mowidi, just as everybody in the south are all one Mowidi. People from the south cannot marry or have babies with anybody else that is southern. You have to marry somebody from the north, just the same vice versa. And that's just a bastardization of what Mowidi means. In this story, we talk about two kinds of people. We have the Dua and the Yirija. People from the same Mowidi are considered siblings, regardless of actual bloodlines. You cannot marry someone from the same Mowidi. This is a sacred law. The Wawalag sisters are from the Dua Mowidi. The sisters were creation beings who traveled through Arnhem land, performing song and dance, cycles that revealed, for the first time, the names of the places they were walking through and the plants and animals they gathered along the way. Because of this, they are associated with the development of Mowidis and language in this land. In some of the story, there is a strong focus on the pregnancy being a result of an incestuous relationship between one of the sisters and a Dua clansman. While they may not be directly related, they share the same moiety, which is why the act is frowned upon. This is a very unique hierarchy and social norm that we see in some cultures around the world. Similarly, this is where it gets interesting. The rainbow serpent swallowing the sisters is also seen as an act of incest because the serpent is also of Dua moiety. The reason why the serpent is sick is because the Dua serpent is eating a Dua person. Therefore, it is the same moiety, and it is wrong. So because the serpent is Dua, it would be better off to consume from the other moiety, which is the Urija. So it's a very complicated concept, I understand. The story of the sisters embody what the clans consider their religious law, and it is traditionally told through paintings, sculptures, song, and dance cycles. These sacred laws are specific to each clan, and they are taught during 3 particular ceremonies. Because of the sacred nature of these rituals, there is a very restricted access to them and a very limited understanding of the knowledge shared during them. It's very personal, and they've only shared so much. An example of this is like the locations mentioned in the story are considered ceremonial grounds, while others have become sacred sites that cannot be visited. The water hole, which is where the sisters last camped before being swallowed by the serpent, can only be visited by elder clansmen, no one else. This sacred story is only but a glimpse into the complexity and beauty of Aboriginal culture and myth. There was a lot to kind of unbox there because there are concepts in this story that define Australian Aboriginal culture as a whole. So we need to talk about it because that's why it's a creation myth for the rainbow serpent. We have to learn about the dreaming. It's incredibly complicated. You have to keep in mind that the Australian Aboriginals have lived in Australia for around 50,000 years. 50,000 years. There's a lot of mythology there. There's very complicated structures, societal structures, unique cultural norms. It's so cool. So I hope I did a decent job at least explaining the story and why the Wagalak sisters are such a pivotal part in some parts of the Aboriginal mythos. For other mythology, you can check out other videos over here. Keep watching, learn a few things. Heroines and goddesses from around the globe are so fascinating, so cool. Plus, I love to draw them. They're really awesome. So continue forward. Come follow me on my socials at Kaiti Draws on Twitter, Instagram. I've got TikTok. I'd love to see you there. So enjoy.